Hello everybody, welcome to this video where I'm going to be talking about necessary evils. And first and foremost, I want to explain what a necessary evil is. So a necessary evil is an idea that people use whenever you have to do something that you shouldn't do, like something bad, to get something good, right? So, most of the time we do good things to achieve good things, and we do bad things and then we get bad results, right? But sometimes we need to do bad things to get good things, and that's the idea, or what people call a necessary evil, right? Now, necessary evils for me are a very weird notion. I'm like, what? But what do you mean a necessary evil? Like, and this is because I'm taking a course, right? A teacher's course, and I was supposed to be like doing a communicative approach in class, in the class that I was doing. So I was supposed to be focusing completely on communication, but I started explaining grammar, right? So this was like something that I did incorrect, that I shouldn't have done. But and then I had to make a report, and in the report I explained that it was a necessary evil, because even though it wasn't communicative long term, it was going to benefit the students, so they would understand the grammar and then be able to apply it correctly. If they didn't understand the grammar, they weren't going to apply it in a communicative activity. Because if you only focus on communication and you don't teach grammar, well, I mean, and right now there's an idea that's like, don't worry about grammar, don't worry about accuracy, don't worry about correcting, just communicate, 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 fluency. And it's like, yeah, but you also have to, instruct and teach the grammar, right? So I said that it was more like 50-50, right? 50% grammar, because I had to explain the four conditionals and this took time. And then the other 50% was communicative. So, there was a 50-50 balance, when in reality it should be like 1% over here, like nothing of grammar, almost no grammar, and like all communicative, right? So it got me thinking about the necessary evil idea. Excuse me. And if you have a hard time understanding this, there are philosophical dilemmas where you have to choose one thing or the other. And then, like the expression there is, you have to choose the lesser of two evils. Like, let's say both choices are wrong, but then you choose the one that is, well, that's kind of like another idea. But let me give you an example. So, so let's say in the community there's a serial killer, right? There's a person that's killing people. This person has already killed 3 people, right? And this person is going to continue to kill people. But and let's say like the jail system or the court system, the justice system doesn't exist. So but there is morality, there is right and wrong. Let's say this was like 100 or 200 years ago. What would you do? What would the community do? In this case, you would have to kill the killer, right? You would have to do this necessary evil. You would have to do a necessary evil in order to avoid the killer from, or basically keep the killer from killing more people, right? So we see this, for example, with like the US, right? The US, I think, is a country that gets into other people's business, like in other countries' business, right? It's currently present, and they'll take out targets, right? Or people that are bad, and that's bad in itself, but they'll like justify it with like, well, if we don't do this, the bad guys are going to continue to do bad things, right? So, which is a pragmatic approach, right? Very pragmatic. And I understand that, right? But there are people that say, no, human rights, and nobody should be doing anything like that. So let me give you an example, or a definition that I got. The definition is: a necessary evil is an evil that must be allowed or made to happen in order for a greater good to be produced, right? So it's the means justify the end, right? Or the end is justified by the means, right? Examples of this, I asked ChatGPT, are insurance. So insurance is a necessary evil, I guess, because you have to pay for something that you're not using just in case you may need it one day, right? Like with an accident. Speed bumps. Speed bumps, they can wreck your car tires, right? Or your motorcycle tires. You have to slow down, right? But they're a necessary evil because if it weren't for speed bumps in certain areas, people would be driving like crazy and probably killing people that are crossing the street or whatever, or getting in accidents, right? Taxes and the government, right? Necessary evils because you have to pay money to the government, and the government is also not that efficient, but without it, we would be worse, right? Exercise and work, right? So exercise is no fun. Nobody likes to exercise. Nobody likes to work, but they're necessary evils to produce, or so greater goods can come from it, right? So then I had this question: could it be used for not doing things the way things should be done at times? Like, for example, at work, or being more practical. Let's say you have a process of doing things, right? And you need to go from step one to step two to step three to step four to step five, right? And but you skip some steps, right? You go from step one to four and five, and you help the person out. So you may be doing an evil, right? You're skipping steps, you're not following protocol, but it's for a greater good, right? So I'm going to bring this idea in here, of the conditionals. The conditionals and the hypotheticals, which are basically the if clauses or the if sentences, right? Like, if I don't know, if I put speed bumps in the city, right? The governor can think, if I put more speed bumps in the city, people are going to be angrier, but I'm also going to be saving lives, or there will be fewer car accidents, right? All of those ideas are morality. And I'm going to explain why. When you think about things in a hypothetical or conditional way, what you're really doing is you're thinking of consequences, cause and effect. As I mentioned in the video previous to this one, you're thinking about cause and effect. And cause and effect is deliberate, it's conscious. You need to be a thoughtful person to have these ideas going on, to be able to think about the consequences of your actions or the consequences of other people's actions, right? That's why it's morality. So you're thinking of the consequences, you're thinking of the results, of the effects, right? When you're using conditional or hypothetical sentences, right? And this can prevent you from doing things you shouldn't, right, without thinking about them, right? That's why you need to think about them. So once you think about it and you say, okay, well, if I did this would happen, so I better not do that, right? And I think it's more in terms of, or in line with, a process or a procedural technique for morality, which is used to consider the possibilities, or it's used to consider possibilities. Now, those could be good, those could be bad, like we know in behaviorism, right? There can be good outcomes or bad outcomes, or favorable outcomes or unfavorable outcomes, right? Ultimately. Now, the if technique, the hypothetical conditional technique, is interesting because if it's overused, if you're always thinking about what could happen, imaginary, right? You basically become anxious, right? You that's anxiety, right? Because you're now just in your head and you're thinking about all the possibilities, and you just become anxious. Now, if it's underused, if you never think about the consequences, about hypotheticals, about conditional situations, then you become impulsive. It's like you're a little kid who doesn't think, right? Who has no morality. You're just doing things, and it's like, hey, watch out! Don't run so fast in the house, because if you run, you will fall and trip, and so that has to do with morality, right? And I think you need a balance. You can't be using conditionals and hypotheticals all the time, but you also can't underuse them, right? Don't overuse them and don't underuse them. There needs to be a balance, right? There needs to be a balance for thinking, and there also needs to be a balance for acting, right? For action. So the key is balance because some people, again, another characteristic of overusing hypotheticals or conditionals, besides generating anxiety in people, is that I can say they will be slow, right? And I see some people are like really slow, right? And I think there's this idea going around too that like being slow makes you like cool, or it makes you seem intelligent, or it makes you seem deliberate. And I know this because the opposite, if people see a person that's like acting fast and is impulsive, right? If this person is impulsive, people will assume that person is stupid, right? So it's like you're impulsive, you're stupid, slow down, think, right? But then if you're always thinking and you're always like, this pseudo intellectual who's like just thinking about everything and considering every little thing, it makes you useless also because you're not getting anything done, right? And I think some people are like really slow at decision making, especially in like day-to-day life, and I think that's not a good thing. Now there are also people that are fast at decision making that you could say operate more with their intuition, and in this case they would be underusing hypotheticals, and that's also another characteristic of underusing hypotheticals and conditionals, and that would also be a bad thing. So again, there needs to be a balance between the two, or you could say sometimes the balance is in the extremes. Sometimes you need to be fast, sometimes you need to be slow, sometimes you need to overuse, sometimes you need to underuse, right? And let me just give you some other vocabulary words here besides if and when, right? Like when this happens, this, or if this happens, if A, B, right? You can use unless. Unless this, unless you do your homework, you're not going out, right? Or unless I save money, I'm not going out this weekend or whatever. Suppose and imagine. I think I like that one, right? Like suppose or imagine, like you're trying to you're trying to transmit an idea, like I with you, right? And I say, imagine you make a video, right? And then a lot of people learn from that video, right? So if you make a video, people will learn from it, right? And that's a good thing, right? It can boost your ego, it can benefit people. People will be able to use that information probably, or it could just be fun and entertaining and make them think, right? Imagine that, suppose, right? As long as you watch that movie, or as long as you have the money, I will sell you the car or whatever, right? And in case this happens, I will, and in case, I think also brings us to the just in case, which I've said throughout my life, JIC. And I've said this because I'm a person, I think, that likes to be prepared, that likes to plan things. So the just in case speaks on planning, preparation, and vigilance, again, which is hyper using or you overusing the hypotheticals and the conditionals, right? Like considering all the options, like what if this happens, I need to bring this, and what if that happens, I need to think about this and figure out how to solve it, right? And you could overstimulate yourself, I guess, through that, and become anxious. So again, you got to watch out for that, right? Okay, and just to finish up this video, I wanted to say that conditionals and hypotheticals help feed your ego morality, which I just said in the previous video. Ego and morality are like the same thing, because your ego is your mask, right? That you show to society, and morality is, there because you are who you are, superficially, because that's what society expects from you, right? That's the face you give, that's your morality. So the conditionals and the hypotheticals, right? All of these considerations. What if, if I dye my hair, the people at work are going to think I'm crazy, and that may bring my credibility down or whatever, so I won't do it, right? So it boosts, it feeds your ego and your morality, right? Hence this limits your true self, right? So you can't really express who you are, you could say. However, they also help you justify the ends, as in the ends justify the means, right? Even if the means are questionable or unethical, as in the case of necessary evils. So let me just bring this around. You can use hypotheticals and conditionals to think about necessary evils as well. And when you think about these necessary evils, then you can even bring your true self in there, right? My question for you would be, what are some of your necessary evils, right? And if you consider these necessary evils and you act on them, well, then think of a politician that presents themselves, egoistically or morality wise as a very good person, and then people find out that this politician embezzled money or something like that. And then the politician comes out and says, well, yes, I did do that, but it was for a greater good. It was because, I donated like most of it to the kids hospital or whatever. And I helped out because I saw that there was no legal way to get the money or something like that, right? Let's say that happens. In this case, you would be using those hypotheticals, right? Like, what if I get caught embezzling money? Well, my plan would be, just in case, to say that, or donate it to, or it's like when people do charity work, but in reality, they're just, connecting with other people or making business off it, right? Excuse me. So you could say this is a way to show your true self, right? To justify, it's like finding a way to breathe, finding a way to be that person that you really are, that trashy, bad human person that you are. You find a way to do it, justifying, your actions, your means, and then you can, like, as long as, like, the objective is a good objective, then the means are justified, right? The ends justify the means, which of course is fallacy, is illogical, it's incorrect. The means shouldn't justify the ends, right? Unless you're being ruthlessly pragmatic, right? Or you're in a crisis and you have to do it, then yes, I agree. But if it's like for your own self gain, or things like this, where it's like, well, I'm just gonna benefit from it because I wanna go on an extra vacation this year or whatever, it's like, yeah, no. So I think that's a good note to leave this video on. Like, what are some necessary evils in your life that you have to do to achieve a greater good? I think we all have them in our private lives. You know who they, what they are. And yeah, that's all I got for this video. So let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace and goodbye.